Thanks for joining us. This is Douglas Trevino, Premier Realtor with Coldwell Banker, residential real estate here in Southwest Florida. I have with me today Michael May. He's a broker associate with Royal Shell Real Estate here in Southwest Florida as well. We're sitting at toward the end of our Brokers Open here at my property in Gulf Harbor. And so we're sitting back. We want to do a quick conversation and have a chat, talk a little bit about things that are going on in the real estate industry that are relevant to buyers and sellers, and maybe even agents can relate to some of this stuff. So, but that's what this is about, and we'll move on from there. Michael, we were talking earlier about highest and best offers, and I know you did a video recently talking about finance offers versus cash offers.
Yeah, what I was mentioning to Doug is whenever you negotiate a contract with a seller, it's important, and to an extent with a buyer, it's important to let everyone know that there's a difference between the highest offer and the best offer. Highest offer is, in a sense, the price, but also there are conditions associated with it which are related to best. And best meaning what are the conditions associated with it? Primarily whether it's cash or mortgage, whether the client is approved or not, and if the client is approved, when will they be approved and how quickly can you close?
Absolutely. And I mentioned to you before too that in many cases for my sellers, I don't make a habit of talking about, when we have an offer, talking about price. And that's always the first question. Well, I'd say always, but usually it's the first question.
Yeah.
How much? What's the offer for?
Yep.
And I always try to make that clear even on the outset when we meet, is saying, listen, with every offer we need to sit down because there's more to a contract than just the price, the terms.
Yeah.
The terms may be completely horrible and the price is great.
Yep.
And like you said, a finance offer, if we get somebody who's got a loan they're going to apply for and they have a pre-qualification or pre-approval, there's no guarantee at the end of the day, at the end of 30 or 45 days, that they're going to get that loan.
That's right.
And we could be taking the house off the market during season and losing 30 to 45 days and you could be losing money at the end of the day. Get it back on the market, and even if you take their earnest money, if they don't get the loan, then you don't even get the earnest money.
That's right. I think one of the biggest fears a seller has to have is that they may be committing to a buyer who, during the time that they're being approved, you may have actually have missed an opportunity with a buyer who was a cash buyer, only to find out that your buyer doesn't qualify. So I think it's very important to set the tone with a seller and with a sales agent who's bringing a buyer to the table to make an offer. As a listing agent, Doug and I would first want to know has this buyer been approved? What are the conditions of his approval? How much he's putting down? And of course, how much he's putting down is expressed on the contract. The more he's putting down, the better a seller should feel about the likelihood of the mortgage going through and getting approved. Both Doug and I have got enough background on the finance side of things that we ask the right questions.
That's true. So the next topic we'd like to cover is aimed primarily to sellers, and this goes into sellers choosing and selecting an agent that's best suited to sell their property. And I've got my thoughts on that, and I'd like to share those, but I'd like to kind of defer to Michael a little bit. He's been in the industry quite a while and has seen a lot of different things. What do you think? What do you think about, Michael, when you're meeting with the seller and you're either the only agent they're interviewing or you're one of many?
Well, I would say that Doug and I both embrace the philosophy that a seller can relate to, and there's three primary things. One is to understand exactly what the market will bear, meaning what will a buyer be willing to pay, the maximum price a buyer would be willing to pay in the current market. Two would be maintaining good contact with the seller and communicating changes in the market and also changes in the competition so that we remain competitive to get the property sold and move on with the seller's goals. And then three, to do my best and to do our best to negotiate to preserve as much of the seller's equity as possible so that the seller can move forward in their goals for the future.
Good point. So that's a good point, Michael, and I agree 100%. And I think the other part of it that I found over time is marketing. Marketing is everything. And you know, when you're meeting with agents and they sit down, and a lot of sellers have certain canned questions that they ask. Either they, you know, are told by other friends or other realtors of questions to ask. And it's a lot of times we get questions that aren't really relevant or as important with respect to selling the house or getting the house sold. And what I find is when I'm sharing with the seller is saying, listen, bottom line, marketing is what's going to sell the home. And the higher the property is in price, the smaller that buyer pool gets. It shrinks, which means your marketing plan has to be that much bigger to draw in the right amount or the amount of potential buyers that you need to draw an offer. And so when I sit down with sellers and I say, listen, it's very simple. Each marketing plan is customized to each specific property. Unless we're dealing with, you know, in a development where there's all apples to apples and everything's all the same, well then that marketing plan is going to be pretty similar. But for the most part, it's going to be tailored. But there's a basic foundation to a marketing plan. There's phases of marketing that need to happen in a timely manner during season, off season. That's going to be a variance. So there's so much when I meet with the seller and I say, this is my marketing plan. And a lot of people are a little amazed by that. And they say, okay, well, we didn't understand this. What do you find, Michael, when you sit with sellers and you present your marketing plan, which is a little bit different than mine?
Yes.
What is your response?
Well, what I do is when a seller is concerned about what is going to be the commission rate, there are a lot of agents out there who will give them what they want to hear in order to get the appointment.
Yep.
But the fact is that when you lay out precisely the marketing plan that is catered for that particular seller, many times an agent who's focusing purely on getting the appointment will not have a satisfactory presentation. The presentation's got to encompass social media, which is the primary method nowadays of communicating a property. Also, you have to have print advertising to be able to get out to the local community close to the property. And another point which a lot of agents are not focusing on is that wouldn't it be nice if an agent had the results of a search for specific age groups in a specific income bracket across the United States that would have a higher chance of being interested in the property. And Doug and I embrace a philosophy and a technique called data mining, which is going out and gathering specific potential buyers relative to the type of property that we're going to market and sell and help the seller move on.
And that's huge. Absolutely. That is huge. Being able to reach out and get your specific property in front of those people who are most likely to buy or know somebody who's most likely to buy. You know, that's the difference between a sold property and an expired one or an unsold one.
Yeah, I agree.
With the amount of expired listings and terminated listings that we see every month, there seems to be a pattern with some agents who aren't marketing correctly to those agents who then pick up those properties, implement a marketing plan, and get that place sold for the highest dollar amount possible in the quickest time. To me, I always see that in one case there's a marketing plan missing, usually, not all the time, but usually. You know, the example that I always bring up with Michael is it's like somebody coming up to you and they don't know the make, model, year, or condition of a car. And they say, well, how much is it worth? How much is your car worth that you have for sale? And we haven't seen it, we don't know anything about it, but how much is it worth? Well, if I throw a price out and I say, well, this car that you know nothing about is $45,000. Well, if that person who's going to be buying in their head, they're thinking about a Ford Escort, 1990, you know, well, that's a crazy price. But if we're talking about a Ferrari, you know, a custom Ferrari, well, that's one heck of a deal. Same thing that goes to pricing a home. You know, you get people who call in and say, well, how much is that property? We just saw that house from the outside. What's it worth? Well, without me explaining the value of this home or the details, just throwing a price out, it has no perspective. There's no perspective on the price or the value that's being offered. And I think the same thing goes with agents. What is the specific agent bringing to the table, right, Michael, for value? What are we doing that's different than the other agents? So if you're saying, well, what is your commission? Without knowing what we're bringing to the table and what we're going to do that's different, that's actually going to get results, talking about commission first is a big mistake. That comes last. After presenting everything, Commission comes last, because there's a couple other things that go into commission as well.
That's right. And what we're talking about is what's known as a value proposition. We have to explain to you the value associated with working with us. The cost is secondary to what we're going to bring to the table to get the job done, to help you move further on with your goals in your plans.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Right now, in my particular situation, I have a listing that I need to have the price reduced, and the seller's resistant to a price change. But what I'm going to tell them today is that in certain situations where you're getting a lot of showings but you're not getting offers, and you notice that the competition is being sold by some of the agents who have viewed your property, what is happening is that the agent is using your high-priced property as a lever to convince buyers to buy a lower-priced property of similar size and amenities. It's very important to know that in a scenario where the realtor comes in and says, hey, we looked at this other property, let's go see this one here. If they come to my listing and know that it's very similar but priced $30,000, $40,000 higher, it justifies buying the other property. Sellers need to know that their properties, if they're improperly priced, can be used as a tool to close buyers to buy another property.
That's absolutely true. And I've dealt with that in the past as well. And I've had a couple of listings in the same neighborhood where one seller was insistent on a certain price. They were open to reducing as they went along, but no matter how I explain the situation, to say, well, somebody is going to use our property to sell all the other homes and show the value those other properties offer, where we're priced really high. And they're going to say, well, for this same property, you could go pay this dollar amount, this high dollar amount for this home, but for the same square footage almost, you could pay this smaller amount. Most buyers will be directed and make that decision to buy that other property. So yeah, absolutely. Those higher end properties, if you're not priced correctly, definitely are going to help sell other properties. I agree. And then it's too late. Then you may be chasing the market when you're trying to come down on your price.
Yeah, the other thing that I am aware of is that when a buyer looks at a property of similar size and amenities, and it's tens upon $10,000 higher than the competition, a message could be being sent unknowingly by the seller to the buyer that they're unrealistic in their price and they may be very difficult to negotiate with. So the buyer goes through the path of least resistance and goes to a seller who they may ultimately sell for 97 or 98% of their good price, list price, where if they're with a seller that's tens of thousands of dollars higher than they should be, then that seller may not want to take 89 or 90 or 92% of the list price, which is actually the value of that property. So the buyer subconsciously feels, and possibly the sales agent will sense, that this seller being unrealistic may also be very difficult to work with in negotiation. So they go to the one that has the least resistance, which is price-based.
That's a good point. Absolutely. So definitely, if you're a seller and you're planning on having your house on the market, you've got to interview more than one agent. And that's my feeling, right? I mean, you've got to, and Michael and I are confident enough. We've been in this business long enough. When I hear that a seller says, well, we're interviewing agents, that's good news to me. Because I'm very confident in what I do. Michael's very confident in what he does. We know that, listen, and a lot of times it's about making a match too with the seller, the homeowner. You've got to be a good fit because you're going to be working together. So sometimes if you're not a good fit, that may be one reason not to go to work. But my opinion is I need that seller to see everything out there. And I feel, and Michael feels as well, we are probably that top 10, 15% of agents who actually have a marketing plan, who actually implement it and can present it in a very understandable way and have it make sense and to show the power of what we do. So I'm happy when we go up against other agents because it also helps that seller understand and feel, well, I saw a whole bunch of people and now I know what else is out there. So I know I did the best thing possible. Pricing. Listen to the agent you pick. If that agent knows the market, knows what they're doing, listen to their advice. And as an agent, when I sit down with somebody, I need to make that decision whether I can work with that seller. Because if the seller says they have a price that just doesn't make sense, they're not going to be reducing or not open to reducing their price. I don't like to have listings to have listings. I like to sell my properties for the highest money possible and in the quickest time possible. So if I have that situation, I am more than happy to walk away. and let them go with an agent who just needs to have a listing on the books, because that's what it's going to end up, right? It's going to end up expired or terminated or withdrawn. And we don't want to waste anybody's time. That's my feeling.
Yep.
Pricing, anyway.
And then the final aspect of getting a property correctly priced is that if you're significantly above the market and the market's raising at a certain rate, the agent should be able to identify, if the market has a continued rate of appreciation, how many months or years down the road before the market catches up to your price. And when you compare that to the carrying cost of a property on a monthly basis, wouldn't it be simple that if it took you 18 months and it costs you, say for example, $1,000 a month, or say $500 a month, and it takes you 18 months to catch up to your price, if that comes out to $9,000 or $18,000 in that period, wouldn't it be best just to take that off the price right now and get the property sold? Doesn't that make sense? That seems the way you need to do it. That's how I tell my sellers that we should consider things.
Makes absolute sense. I mean, and that's a great way to present it too. Absolutely. You know, we're going to continue making these videos, and as we go along, and hopefully they're informative. Hopefully they're appreciated. If they are, subscribe to our channels. Certainly that way you can keep up to date on what's happening. And as we move forward, we'll be doing more of these, as we said. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.